evening. It's 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call this school board meeting to order on April 20th at 6 o'clock. And if everybody could join for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Isn't working very well.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're definitely not the Rolling Stones.
The hodgepodge.
All right, Veronica, if you could do the roll call, please.
Mr. Imes?
Here.
Mr. McInnes?
Here.
Mr. McCreary?
Here.
Mrs. McKay?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here. All right, and our first adoption for the evening would be the emergency policy adoption recommended by Dr. Irucci for the approval of policy 0165.11 to have a virtual open meetings due to the COVID-19 state of emergency. Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think this was just some guidelines from the Attorney General and from our legal counsel to make sure that, you know, our policies are aligned to be able to do this, because typically we wouldn't be able to do this in other situations.
Okay.
This is Ted McInnes. I'll move the adoption of it.
Thank you, Ted.
I'll second. Go ahead. Go ahead, Gary.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All who oppose, say no. Or anyone that opposes, say no. Okay.
Motion passes.
That motion passes. All right, we'll move on to Dr. Irucci's report.
Well, after 3 o'clock today, I had to change some of my report as we found out from Governor DeWine that, you know, the extended closure now is extended all the way to the end of the school year. And so I just, you know, want the community and the board to know that we've been planning for this and really just kind of waiting on the governor, because we felt like that was going to be the case, that with the situation that we would probably not finish the year in any face-to-face environment, but we are going to continue to do this remotely. And so, you know, let me just say, first of all, I think it's important for us to recognize, you know, all of our students at this point, but in particular our seniors. I know today was probably a rough day for a lot of them, because they found out, you know, that we're going to really change the way we do things and some of the experiences that our seniors have had. And I just want to tell you that we've had conversations with our seniors. We think we got a really good, or the best possible plan we could have given the situation. Just a couple highlights. Friday night at 8:20, we will turn our stadium lights on as a kind of a tribute to some of our seniors. And we're going to encourage them, if they are out and about in their cars, that they obviously stay in their cars, but, you know, to encourage them maybe to drive by the lights and see, because that's a tribute to our seniors. Friday night at 8:20. And all of the schools in the county are doing the same thing at the same time. And so I think that will be just something small. We've got a couple other things planned for seniors, and I don't want to tell you because some of them are a surprise, but we do have some things that we are going to plan to do specifically for them. We are looking at holding commencement on May 17th as planned, although it will be a much different situation. So we are looking right now at a kind of a drive-through commencement, if you will. I did talk to both the mayor and the director of the Department of Health. And so we are looking at having our kids participate in a parade, obviously to stay in their cars, probably starting somewhere in town and then making our way out to Harding High School, where we will have a drive-through diploma ceremony, if you will. Chris Stone has done a really good job of communicating and working with some folks in the community. It looks like our radio stations will actually broadcast our commencement ceremony. So our valedictorians and our class presidents and our principals can all kind of give their speeches. And so we can do some of the things that we normally do. It's just going to be in a different environment. So although it's going to be different, I think it's going to be somewhat of a memorable experience for some of our seniors. So we're going to, again, try to do the best we can. We are still planning on having an awards night. That's something that we do for our high school on May 6th. And again, Chris is putting that information together, as well as, we talk a lot about seniors, but we can't forget, that this experience for 8th graders when they're leaving Grant to go to the high school is somewhat, of an experience for them in itself. All of our 5th grade graders are getting ready to make a transition, from going into 6 elementary buildings into 1 middle school. And so we have to be mindful of all of our students to try to get as many experiences to them as possible, and not just our seniors. And so we're working on a lot of those types of situations. And, there's obviously a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions on social media today, like how do we get equipment and personal belongings out of some of our buildings? Because, really some of them are still left in the lockers. And not every kid took all that they needed to take home on that last Friday before we close. So we'll be making all of those arrangements and having all of those discussions about, how we get personal belongings back to our students. And again, so that being said, that's, really what we're doing in relation to the closure for the rest of the year. Just a couple of reports that I'd like to give you. We are still delivering meals on a weekly basis. I got a phone call from Central Ohio ESC superintendent who was at a meeting of some other superintendents and some, food bank operators and those kinds of things to address food service. And it was brought up in the meeting in Columbus that Marion City Schools should be a model for all schools in what we've been able to do in delivering meals. Last Wednesday, we delivered over 30,000 meals to 3,000 students, which is pretty incredible. I mean, you think about that. That's an incredible feat. Really proud of all those folks who are participating in that, from Winnie Brewer and her whole staff to Jake Grau and the custodians and the bus drivers. I mean, our aides, our teachers, our administrators have all pitched in to help in that effort. And I think we've done a pretty good job as well with, the way we package the food and how we deliver it to make sure that we're following the social distancing guidelines as well. And so, I'm really happy and proud to report that all of those things are happening with meals on a regular basis. In relation to delivering education during this time remotely, I mean, obviously you can imagine the type of work that would have to go into, and really in a matter of 3 or 4 days, to go from our face-to-face, what we do normally on a regular basis, to be able to, have teachers put lessons together, to make sure that, our families have the technology that they need. So as we transitioned after those first 3 weeks, where we had some pencil and paper packets to make sure that all of our students had access to all of what we were providing lesson-wise, and knowing that we could no longer do that because of the social distancing requirements and things like that, and to make that decision to go to completely online, as you can imagine, was a pretty daunting task. And again, giving our staff a lot of credit, the technology staff, the teaching and learning staff, to put together a plan for that. I mean, we delivered last week, I think it was in the week before, Thursday, Friday, Monday, over 1,800 Chromebooks to families. We've been working with a lot of our businesses around town to make sure that, internet access with our Chromebooks would be available. So students can actually go to some of our businesses in the parking lot, park in a certain place, and have access to the internet that way. We did provide, some internet hotspots where we absolutely had to, but that was another pretty daunting task for a district like ours to, there was a lot of surveying that was done amongst families to see what they had and what they didn't have. And I'm pretty confident that we've done a really good job of getting the devices and things like that into the hands of families to use that. One of the things that was really of a concern to a lot of us was that within the first 3 weeks of the closure, we had about 470 students, somewhere in that number, that we could not make contact with. That, which was a major concern. And again, I'll credit our teachers and our staff members that, really put forth an all-out effort to make contact with these students. Our SROs went to houses, our principals went to houses, our ESPs went to houses. And we have that down to probably under 80 students right now, which I think is pretty incredible. So that's a good thing, but we still, that's 80 students still, though, that we have had no contact with that since we have closed schools. And so we still have a responsibility to look after those kids, and we're doing some things to try to get them engaged and parents involved as well. So even though we've done a pretty good job, we still have a number of students that we have not been able to make contact with. I have sat in on numerous building meetings, staff meetings, and our buildings meet every Wednesday now at 9:00. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what we've done with the schedule, but we've tried to make Wednesdays what we call is basically a social emotional learning day. So we've given resources to our families. We use an acronym called CARE, and I'm not sure exactly what each letter stands for, but basically it's about making sure that families have some access to some resources to kind of get through this. And it's given an opportunity for us as a district, so our staff members can get together. And as you can imagine, our teachers are having conversations about what's working. What are you doing that maybe I could use to help further engage my students? And so I've listened to 2 or 3 different buildings talk, and I can tell you that, for anybody that might have the idea that, our teachers aren't working right now, I would argue that they're probably working harder than they ever had. Not only did I witness it myself at home, but, I had talking to teachers about, and you can imagine this, some of our parents are essential workers and they work all day and they're coming home and trying to help their students with homework and making sure they get done. So they have to have access. They're texting, they're emailing teachers, they're calling them 8:00, 9:00. One teacher told me she got a phone call at midnight last night because a parent works afternoon shift. And so, I just want you to know that, our staff is doing an incredible, amazing job with what they're dealt with. I know that it was devastating today to a lot of our staff members because they really miss the kids and care about them. So, so they've done an excellent job, and really proud of them. So I think that is, well, again, we wanted to also update you that as far as the culture survey and the things that we've done when we left school, we are continuing to do. And, we are going to still make sure that we're having discussions about how we can improve the relationships that exist within the district with not only just our teachers and our families and all those kinds of things. So we are going to continue to work on that. But I can tell you that I feel like there's a spirit of cooperation like I've not witnessed in the district recently. And that's a tribute to all of our staff members who have been patient and cooperative with the district throughout this time. And so I think that's about it. I don't know if you have any questions for me that maybe I didn't answer. There's just a heck of a lot to talk about in regards to this, and I tried to get everything I could to you. We will be releasing a lot of information this week to our families and to our staff. I know that we worked on some grading policies and things like that we had to take into consideration, and we'll be getting that information out. We've been working on that, but we'll get that information out to our staff and our families this week. So I don't know if you have any other questions. Sorry, I took up some time there, but I wanted to make sure you had as much information as possible.
Ron, this is Ted McKenna.
Ron, I had just a couple of comments real quick.
Okay.
As you plan the May 17th commencement ceremony and awards night, please keep us involved, informed about how how you might see us partaking in that as well. I think that's important to us as well, to be a part of that. And the other thing I'd like you to do, if you can, is pass along to especially the teachers and our staff, how much we do appreciate all the work that they've done. I've had countless number of my colleagues who are now working from home like I am and dealing with their school-age children and saying, I never had an appreciation for what teachers did. And now I know, and it's amazing, and thank you for what you've done. And so I'd like you to make sure that you share that with our teachers and staff, because they have done an amazing job.
Ron, I'd just like to follow up too on your comment or question about folks accessing the buildings for their personal things for the rest of the school year. The OSBA sponsors a virtual group session every Wednesday, and they're doing so this Wednesday at 4 o'clock, between 4 and 5 o'clock. And one of the topics will be addressing how districts are allowing folks to go back into the district, their buildings, to access those personal items. That's one of the topics.
Okay.
What time is that, Ted?
Between 4 and it starts at 4 and ends at 5.
Okay.
On this every Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
Mhm.
All right.
Ron, you also mentioned the awards night. What does that look like? Will that be, I mean, is that going to be a virtual thing, or will that be students in a building, or what do you think?
Oh
that's
no, it'll definitely be virtual. You know, I'm going to we're working on what that looks like right now. It'll probably be a platform similar to what we're doing right now, so it'll be live streamed. A lot of it will probably be pre-recorded. So our, valedictorian and salutatorian will probably prepare some remarks, as well as myself and Leslie. I'm sure you'll have some remarks as a board president, and so Chris is working on that, coordinating all those efforts. So a lot of that stuff, whenever you have time, I'm sure it'll be a little bit a shortened version of what we typically do, but we'll be able to read off all of our award recipients and scholarships and things like that they've read. So I'll get that information out, as we progress on what we're doing with those situations.
Okay. What about Proxy Signing Day? Is that going to be done?
Yeah, I will get back to you on that. I know that Kelly Garrett and Jen Musbaugh had some of those conversations too.
Okay.
I think it's been a little bit difficult maybe gathering some of the information, but we'll do the best we can with that as well. So I'll make sure we talk about that.
Understand. Yes, and I would just like to ditto the all the effort that is being made across the district. I see it firsthand with Layla and Ellie and their teachers on meetings, and it was just last week. It was nice that, Mrs. Geyer was joining in with Mrs. Parthmore to reach out and just to let them know that she's there if, they need to talk to her about anything. And then also the collaboration with Mrs. Barker, the music teacher. And I'm sure that's happening across, elementaries and so forth. But yeah, it's just been amazing.
Thank you. That's all I have for today then.
All right. So from there, we'll move on to Mrs. Lawson's update.
So is Ron
and enrollment?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So as Ron discussed the need to just, move forward with some of the processes that we had already started before everything closed. We are continuing with registration and enrollment. In terms of registration, though, I just want you to think about registration a little bit differently. So really separating registration and screening, which we have done in the past sort of as a combined effort. And so what you're going to see through social media and on the website is information moving forward with registration. So we're going to move forward with both preschool and kindergarten registration by the parent that's interested in registering their child for either one of them. If they're interested in kindergarten registration, they will contact the building. The building will return that phone call, and they'll get pertinent information, specifically an email address. If they're interested in preschool, they'll contact Wendy Vansickle, again, through the same process. They'll be requested an email address. When PowerSchool, which is our enrollment software, when it is ready, which would be around mid-May, when it's ready, they will send a link to the parents. What we have found is that more of our parents are prepared with technology than ever, especially with Chromebooks and things like that. That link then will allow them that first stage of registration. After that part is complete, they will be notified on what documents they will still need to provide in order to formalize that registration process. In the past, we have then had them go through a screening process. Students go through a screening process. That screening process is very valuable in terms of student placement, making sure that we're ready for students when they come in the first day. But it's not required. And so right now we're really kind of thinking about the difference between things that are really required and things that are valuable. And so what we are prepared then for when school resumes, or when we can see them again, going through a screening process at that point. And so it may look different, especially in kindergarten, maybe not putting students in classes right away until we have an opportunity to at least assess in some manner, so that we can make sure that we place students in the right spot. But we haven't gotten that far yet, but we know that we need to separate the screening and registration process because we won't be able to see students face to face. And so we'll take care of that process. So that's registration. And then in terms of enrollment, we're continuing to move forward with that. We are accepting enrollment applications via the mail or the Dropbox, and both of those have been incredibly popular. We have received a very large number of enrollment applications, and so that process continues into June 1st for inter and intra until 2 weeks after school starts, which for us technically is in September, so per the policy. So we're still continuing on with our guidelines and the dates within the guidelines for enrollment. And again, we haven't had any issues up to this point with parents being able to get those enrollment applications in. We are continuing to try to put things on social media and the website and trying to really get people to go to the website for continued updated information and continuing to push them there. When we first closed, we were doing one calls every night and really trying to update parents every night, parents and families every night. We have since gone back to the Sunday one calls, letting the building principals do those one calls every Sunday. And if there's something from the district, we're giving the principals that information. But we're really trying to get to, please go to the website. Please go to the website. That will have the most up-to-date information. That will have the most current links, and really trying to drive the traffic there. Because our social media, we're having to post so much that you could miss it. But that's, our website really is the only place where we know that we can really house all of the most current information. So we're trying to do that again with kindergarten registration, preschool registration, enrollment process. We'll do the same thing when we have, as Ron mentioned, graduation updates and all of that type of thing. So are there any questions that I can answer about enrollment or registration?
I do not.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you for that update. All right, next we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Treasurer Reinhardt recommends the approval of board minutes from March 16th, 2020. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Mike.
All right, discussion. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Okay, motion passed. Treasurer Reinhardt recommends the approval for the following financial items, and there were file attachments for all of us to view. Did anyone have?
I have a few things to add about some financial information, and I don't know if you want to do this motion and then I could talk about it.
Sure.
It's not specific to this motion.
Okay. Who would like to motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
Discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Okay, financial are approved.
Okay, I'm gonna, can you see a new screen on your screen that says financial implications?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to talk a couple things. Well, for the first thing that I want to say is just to the board, we as staff members really have to thank you for all the support you've given us. I think that, we're trying to do our best to keep everybody in a job and keep them employed. I think that is a core belief of our district to treat people fairly and as good as we can. So, I appreciate, and so do so many of our employees, that they still are able to have an opportunity to work and get a paycheck. So I just wanted to thank you from all of our staff on that. But I wanted to talk about a couple things that this pandemic has been doing to us a little bit financially. And I'm just going to touch on a couple things because I don't want a train to hit you someday and you think, what the heck just happened? There are some things that are coming our way that are going to help us. The first of which is number one. We applied last Friday for some relief from FEMA. We filled out our initial claim, got that submitted. What that does is gives us a reimbursement for cleaning supplies and things that you need immediately in a pandemic. We can get approximately up to $3,000 per building to help with some of that cost. And we actually had bought, I call them Ghostbuster canisters, but they're these things that you take into a room and you spray it. So we had actually bought them for each building right when this happened. So hopefully we'll get reimbursed for them in some of our cleaning supplies. So that's the first thing we've done. The second piece of information I have is through the CARES Act that we've all been hearing about. But what I want to focus on that is that CARES Act will provide to the state of Ohio what is equal to about 80% of what the entire state of Ohio received last year in Title I funding, which is $480 million. The state of Ohio is going to give that money to local jurisdictions based on what we received in Title I funding this year. So what we were told is to assume that we will get around 70% of what we received this year. For Marion City Schools, that probably will be about 1.4. Ted, we lost Ted.
Oh, I'll watch for him.
Okay. Do you want me to continue or wait till he pops back on? Okay.
Go ahead and continue.
Okay, I'll continue. Okay, so for Marion, it could be around $1.4 million that we'll get. The thing about that money, though, is it has to be spent on things that you would spend title money on. So it is super great. It's going to be a super great fund of money. We just won't be able to just spend it on whatever. But they're working on that. They're working on what that will look like for us, what our requirements will be. But we will get a significant amount of money to help through there. And there is a third pot of money that the state of Ohio paid for. It's another fund called the Emergency Education Aid, and that is for kindergarten through post-secondary. Those funds have not been granted yet. The governor did apply for them, and the state is not sure what that funding will look like how we'll get access to it, if it's an award basis, if we automatically get it. But when we get more information on that, I'm certain that if it's an application process, we'll apply. If it's just a funding process, we would get it, automatically, whatever. That pot of money is not as large as the money in CARES Act, but again, it is another pot of money to help give us some relief going forward. Concerns, though, and this is what you really need to just keep in your mind right now. So obviously, with the state shut down, the state revenues have taken a nosedive. They, in the month of March, they had a half a month worth of revenues and none in April. They have lost a tremendous amount of money with no lottery sales. Particularly, all the racinos are closed, which brought millions of dollars a month in. Those aren't operating anymore, so they're not getting anything on that. And the sales tax revenues have the last conference I had heard, or the last call I was on, they have dived well over half. So those are the two areas that the state used, the pots of money that they use to help fund the state. So on a conversation with ODE the other day, every department in the state was asked to reduce their budget by 20%. ODE told us that they do not know what the magnitude of reductions that they're going to have will be, but it will happen and we need to plan on it. So the question posed back to us as treasurers were, help us think about how we can make these reductions that will be the least impactful on you if you can even do it. Some of the things that they talked about on that conversation was they're trying to spare us fiscal year 20. They're trying to keep us whole in 20, but then that means all the reductions that they're going to have to do would have to focus on 21. That might not work for the state because they might not have the cash flow. So we might see something happen in fiscal year 20, but again, they don't know. One of the suggestion was lift some of the limitations on the student wellness funds and just consider them, funds that we can spend on to meet our basic operating needs. One of the things that was actually emphasized quite strongly is if you're going to reduce public schools, don't make the reduction heavy just on public schools, make it equitable between public and the charter schools and the non-public schools that you're funding. They did say that they were looking at this whole situation as a 15-month problem. They're looking at it from an April to June timeline and then a July to June of 2021 timeline. And they also mentioned that many of the items already in the budget this year have been funded. So it's not real easy for them to go back and pull. They normally don't go back and pull back funding. Like they have already funded our wellness funds. They've already funded all the scholarship funds for the year. They've already funded all the excess costs for the year. So some things they can't backtrack on. But these are conversations that are happening out there that I think you need to be aware of. In Marion, I can tell you that I've been starting to analyze, and I was hoping to have a little bit more information for you tonight, but things just didn't work out that way for me. But we're starting to take a real look at, what is happening to us financially from March to June. We are missing a whole quarter of a school year. So there are some definite savings that I don't think that I'd even thought about. If students aren't coming here, there are things that we aren't spending money on. There are things that we are spending additional money on because kids aren't coming to school. But I think that this fiscal year, even if we have a reduction, I think that, being closed for a quarter of the school year is going to help offset that. I have no idea, and they still don't know what fiscal year 21 is going to look like. One thing that we did talk to ODE about was, we really need to know sooner than later. Hiring decisions are being made. We need to know, what our budgets, at least some semblance of what we might be looking at. But I do want you to keep in mind this number, that if the state would come out and tell us, like, you're going to be reduced X% or whatever, 1% of our state funding is $445,000. If they cut us 1%, we can figure out 1%. We can figure out 445,000. If they cut us 5%, that's a whole nother ballgame. So, for us at Marion, when we start talking about state reductions, it is something that we really need to listen to because we get almost 80% of our money from the state. So I just want you guys, I wanted you to be aware of these conversations that are going on out there. And again, it's just like, are we going to teach tomorrow or how are we going to teach in the fall? We don't know the answers to any of these questions, but I do want you to know that Ron and I are on calls at least weekly, if not a couple of times a week, with people that know a lot more than I do about this stuff. So, we are keeping up on what's going on and what they're talking about. So, if you guys have any questions on this, I'd be happy to talk further. But right now, I don't know what it looks like. The state, and the state doesn't know what it looks like at the state right now either. But I did think it was important to kind of talk about this a little bit today, because again, I don't want to come in May and say, oh, and by the way, we didn't talk about this, but there's some big things going on at the state level financially. And this is not just schools, obviously, it's every state agency. And when you think about the demands right now on unemployment and on, our healthcare system, while this is the most important to us, there's obviously some really big needs out there that they also have to address. So that's all I really have to say about it. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an update on this. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or any further comments. So, I was trying to keep it a little bit on the positive side, so I wasn't all doom and gloom, but yeah.
We appreciate that update.
Okay.
We do.
How about testing?
I think we need a. What?
Veronica,
Yes.
testing
Yes,
that they
Yes.
didn't do. What's that money doing, or is it already
So,
spent?
so what I had heard in an earlier conversation, that for this year, ODE is not in as bad a situation as some other departments, because the money that they're not spending on the assessments will offset some of the 20% reduction that they were asked to have. So let's say, I have no idea, but let's say at the state level, that's 10% of their overall budget. They're using that to offset the 20%, part of the 20% that they have to reduce. They are having a significant savings by not doing the assessments this spring. That was, I had heard that right at the very beginning when they had decided not to do testing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And remind me, did we approve the financials before the discussion? We did. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
did.
So with that, we will move on to the hearing of the public. I don't believe we had any questions submitted to us. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So we'll move on to agenda confirmation. Are there any, I do believe there's an addition to the agenda.
Yes. On employment and personnel, on resignation retirements, Jenny Jester is resigning as a custodian effective today. And that is on, I have added it to the agenda, but you did not see that because we got that resignation late today.
Okay. All right.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Agenda approved. We will move on to new business line items. Dr. Irusi recommends that due to the COVID-19 state of emergency, the board elects not to conduct evaluations under Chapter 3319 of the Ohio Revised Code for teachers during the 2019-20 school year, to the extent that such evaluations were not completed prior to March 14th, 2020.
So
So
moved.
moved.
The resolution.
I'm sorry.
I think Gary got that. Somebody. We're covered.
What, Ted? Oh. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. All right, motion carried. Next is the distance learning during COVID-19. Dr. Irucci recommends the board authorizes superintendent's development and implementation of a plan of distance learning as set forth in Exhibit A to enable and require students of the district to access and complete classroom lessons in order to make up hours because of the closing and compliance with orders of the governor, director of Ohio Department of Health, a local board of health, and or an extension of such an order due to COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Dr. Irucci recommends the authorizing the superintendent and treasurer during the time period that Marion City School District's school buildings are closed to students due to COVID-19, Governor DeWine and Dr. Amy Acton orders to take any and all actions necessary to maintain educational programming for students and provide for the safety of all students and staff, which includes directing students and staff as appropriate, implementing curriculum as appropriate, purchasing, obtaining, leasing, or otherwise utilizing and paying for all necessary supplies, services, technology, and equipment necessary for education through the alternative means within current budget appropriations, in complying with orders and guidance used by the federal and state government and agencies in response to COVID-19 crisis. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Dr. Irucci recommends that due to the unprecedented and unforeseen circumstances caused by COVID-19 closures, the Marion City Schools will comply with the Ohio Board of Education graduation standards requiring graduating seniors in the class of 2020 to have completed 20 credits. That's down from 21 credits in the required subject areas. Motion,
So
please.
moved. So moved.
Second.
Great
Second.
job.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Dr. Irucci recommends the approval of an MOU with Marion Education Association and the Board of Education regarding evaluations for the 2019-2020 school year only and OTES implementation for the 2020 and 2021 school year as presented.
Also move.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion?
Leslie, I just want to report to the board that the MEA did ratify the MOU today.
Thank you for that. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. Motion carried. Dr. Irucci recommends approval of an agreement between Columbus State and Marion City Schools to offer CCP classes for 2020-2021 school year, including summer of 2020 per the attached. And that is agreement.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Dr. Irucci recommends the adoption for locally recognized graduation seals aligned with ODE recommendations as attached. Motion, please.
So move.
Thank you. Did someone second that?
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Next, we'll move on to new business agreements and contracts. There's Dr. Irucci recommends the following 9 contracts to be approved. The first one being the approval of the service agreements with Meta for the 2021 school year. The next is the Creative Leadership Solutions agreement between Marion City Schools and Creative Leadership Solutions to provide professional learning, consultation, and coaching to improve collaboration and achievement. The contract with Marion City Schools and Kerwin Press to provide ongoing professional development on student-centered coaching. Contract between Marzano Resources and Marion City Schools for the 2021 school year to provide consultation support and professional development on the use and standards-based report cards and the development of a 3 to 5 standards-based report card. Proposed agreement between Marion City Schools and Elise Frattura, PhD, University of Education, to provide an external equity evaluation as a follow-up from the 2017 school year. An agreement between Marion City Schools and eSchool View to provide website creation and support per attachment agreement. An agreement between Marion City Schools and Marzano Resources to provide professional development webinar on standard-based grading. And an agreement between the Marion City Schools and Microsoft Products as attached for district-wide licensing. And finally, the approval of an agreement between Marion City Schools Meta Solutions for internal connections components for E-rate items per attached. So we had all those agreements attached in our agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I noticed on the Corwin agreement, they have our address as incorrect as 420 Presidential Suite. That might need to be updated.
I'll let them know.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, is that it? With that,
Need to
all
vote.
those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. All right, we will, motion carried. Next, we'll move on to the consent calendar. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and removed by the consent agenda. Superintendent recommends approval of all consent agenda items. Employment is specifically conditioned on and subject to successful background checks, receipt and final administrative review of all application records, and receipt of all other necessary documentation.
I will move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on any of those? All right, so we will, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Next, we have board announcements. Our next meeting will be on May 18th at 6 o'clock. We will do another virtual meeting. And then we'll move on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports? I know insurance is meeting tomorrow. Does anyone else have anything? All right.
I pulled this screen back up for our hires.
Yes.
Leslie, we do have 2 of our new administrators that we will be onboarding next year.
Great.
I think that they are waiting somewhere in our virtual reality to address the board. And so Chris Sabin is our candidate that I've recommended to the board and has now been approved to be the Grant Middle School principal starting next year, as well as Amy McKinney-Janev, who will be an assistant elementary principal for us as well. So Veronica, I don't know if you can work your magic and get whoever on to say hello.
Chris, did you contact them? There we go. Chris, is your audio on?
Here,
There we go. Chris?
Amy McKinney-Janev, who will be assistant elementary. Monica, I don't know if you can work your magic and get whoever on to say hello.
Do you see, Chris is on. There we go.
Hello.
And Amy's not on yet, but as soon as she, audio on.
I can hear you guys.
There we go. Chris?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Chris, if you just want to say hello and kind of introduce yourself to the board, just take a couple minutes to do that. They might have some questions. Hello.
Do you see, Chris is on. There we go.
Somebody needs to turn off their, has the YouTube channel. We can hear in the back. So
Oh, that might be me. I
okay.
can hear you guys.
There we go. Chris?
Yep. Can you hear me? Did that stop it?
Yep.
That was me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Am I up?
Yes, you are.
Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here tonight, virtually, I guess. I never envisioned it would happen this way, but it's an honor to be here tonight. Just wanted to, introduce myself. First of all, I have my wife and kids. We're here at home. We're doing good. They're 5 and 7, so it's a little bit nonstop at times, but it's been an experience for us. So it's pretty good here. Most recently about me, some quick resume highlights. Currently, I'm the assistant principal at Westerville North High School. There's a team of us there. I've been there for a couple years. Prior to that, I was in Olentangy as a math teacher and assistant principal at the middle school and high school level. And I started off my career as a high school math teacher in Hamilton Township, just south of Columbus. I'm excited to lead the community of learners at Grant Middle School. To me, throughout the interview process, I talked about how my focus as a leader is on student learning. I'm making sure that we have a culture of learning and that we're caring about every individual in our community of learners. My goal is to work every day to serve our community, build on the successes, and work to make Grant Middle School the best it can possibly be. Besides that, I'm ready to get going. It's not really my style to be held back here. I'm behind a computer, not able to work with people, but when we get the opportunity, we'll do everything that we can here virtually to get off to a smooth start next year.
Well, we welcome you to our district.
Oh, so couldn't be happier. I'm so excited.
And so I'm a parent of a Grant student, and my husband's a principal at Harding.
Oh, wonderful.
So look forward to meeting you.
Well, yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Is Amy on board?
Yep, she's on.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?